Hello, chess fans. I apologize for the weird audio. It's just a problem with my mic for some reason. And I'm gonna analyze a game that I played against Ogre Escalada, and it had an absolutely beautiful checkmate at the end, so I just had to show it. So I start off with d4. My opponent plays d6, and I play e4. We transpose into a perk, which would have come out of e4, d6, d4. And well, the perk is supposed to be bad because usually they play knight of 6 to stop e4, you play c4, and then you go for a king's Indian. But here he played d6 first, so he allowed the perk, and the perk is not a very good opening, so I decided to go for it. So knight f6, knight c3, g6, and here you have a lot of options. The most common options are bishop e3, f3, bishop e2, knight f3, and f4. And basically, any of those moves are pretty good. Bishop g5 and g3 are also decent sidelines, but I played the main line, which is f4, and this is the main line by far. The second main line is knight f3 and then bishop e3. But knight f3 is kind of, you're pretty much going for a lesser advantage because you have less control of the center, and bishop e3 is probably the other good way to play, but this f4 way is a lot more pleasant, I think. My opponent played bishop g7. Here I developed another piece, knight f3, castles, bishop d3, and this has all been played like thousands of times. Here there's another interesting variation, which is bishop e3, and this variation is equal, but your opponent will have to go for a hedgehog setup for equality, and so this is another decent way to play. But I played bishop d3, which is the main line, and it has a really simple idea. You play castle, and then you play for e5 or f5, and sometimes you play knight g5, like queen h5 with h4 sometimes you play queen e1, queen e4, sometimes you get the bishop along here, and sometimes you play knight e2 with c3, and your center is just really big. So it's a really good system against the perk, and there's not really a good way to punish it. So here there's really like a ton of moves. Knight a6, knight c6, knight d7, c5, bishop g4, knight a6, like c6. Everything is a move here, basically. e6, rook e8. Like, if you play a move, it's probably a move here. But the move my opponent played is one of the main lines, and it's one of the main lines that is extremely good for white, which is c5. And the reason it's good for white is because after d takes here, you play e5, and your opponent goes knight d5. We go knight x d5, okay, knight x d5, queen x d5, and we just have way more central control. After our queen comes to e2, we have ideas of e6, we have ideas of bishop e4, our bishop comes to d2 here, we castle queenside, and we just get this really big attack, and while the center is closed so that his bishop is really not doing anything. So I'm actually not entirely sure why this is so great for white, but the win rate here is around like 60% to 50% for white, and that is ridiculously high. So instead I played d5 because, well, I played d4 on move 1, so I was trying to get some sort of d4 opening, and this kind of looks like a Benoni, I feel. And so here I expected him to play either knight a6 or e6, which, wow, they're the main moves. e6 makes sense, it's attacking the center, and my opponent did play e6. And here you can castle, but I thought after takes that my bishop is kind of strange, but I guess I have knight d2, knight c4. And also I thought that I just kind of have a worse Benoni because I'd rather have my pawn on f2. If my pawn is on f2, I think we might just have a Benoni. But the pawn here makes it so I can't put my bishop here. I can't really do much. So instead he took, and we still have a few games in the database. Here I castles, and here my opponent plays knight c6. So, I mean, this looks all really natural, but apparently you're not supposed to play knight c6, and instead you're supposed to play like c4. And after like bishop e2, you have a weakness here. Your opponent can play like bishop e3, get a nice bishop. Not entirely sure why it's so bad. And yeah, after knight c6 here, there's a really crushing move for white. And see if you guys can find it. And I'll give you a hint. It has to do with the fact that black is going to play d4 next. Okay, so it's actually not knight d4 because that would just give up a free pawn, but it's f5 because the bishop is controlling this square. And he really shouldn't take, because if he takes, he kind of just gets murdered on this. This will happen. I mean, the position just plays itself for white. So instead, after this, he would probably have to go with bishop d7 or bishop c8. And in which case, well, we've gotten our open line for the bishop. We've prevented here because on here we can go f6. We can go e5 and f6, and the position is really pleasant for white here. Instead, I played queen e1, which has a sort of Grand Prix like idea, which you want to go to h4, then you want to play h5, maybe bishop h6, maybe knight g5, knight comes here to f4, bishops here, rooks here. Nice plan, but it just allows d5, which I didn't think was possible because I thought I'd play e4 and he just has to go back and then I could play f5, but actually I can't do that because the e4 pawn is not defended enough. So he played rook e8 and he didn't see d5, and well, he's playing a sort of Sicilian-like setup except without the e-pawn, so d5 is again a natural push into Sicilian. Now I play queen h4 and now I'm actually much better. My opponent plays knight g4. This is a bad move, but he wants to trade queens because I think he can see that all my pieces are going to come alive. And of course, I don't want to trade queens. Here the best move is knight g5, but I thought after h6 that I would just have to go back. I'm not entirely sure what after knight g5 h6. Knight g5 h6. F5, and if he just goes back, then I take this knight. Okay, so I guess I could play knight g5, but queen g3 looks more like human, and I'm going to play like h3, I'm going to play f5, going to play like bishop g5, maybe knight g4. My opponent plays c4, trying to go for some tactics. He's going to try to take here, open up this diagonal towards my king, maybe get some knight g4 action. Here I play f5, which is the best move. And yeah, bishop e2 is just actually worse for white. And here you have to play energetically, and I've already missed my chance to play f5, so if I don't do it now, I'm going to just never play it again. Because I'll play bishop e2, then he'll play queen b6, bishop d4, maybe knight d4, d5. He gets a ton of counterplay, so you have to strike quickly. And if he takes here, which he does in the game, but then takes here, and if he takes here, I take here, he comes on the f-file because I'm forking his two pieces, so it's unpleasant. So he checks, I go king h1, cx d3, he has to take my piece. If he moves away, then I just grab his pawn, so he'll just be down a pawn for no reason. So takes, I take here, and if he takes here, I think I play knight d5, and then if his queen moves, I play knight g5, picking up the exchange, because he has to keep on this pawn. So that was probably the idea why he can't take on e6, and if he takes here, oh wait, yeah, he's just hanging the knight as well, actually, so yeah, he has to do this. So then I take here, he takes here, and I take on f7, he takes with the knight, and I play cxd. So here now I'm up a pawn from that entire thing, and I'm not only just up a pawn, I have a beautiful file for my rook, my knight has a nice square on d4, and he has a weakness on d6. So this position is around +2, even though I'm just up a pawn. And honestly, to me, it looks like it's more than +2, maybe +3 at this position, honestly. But I managed to mess it up a little bit. My opponent plays rook f8, which is one of the best moves. It simply just defends this knight so that the king can move, and also the other rook kind of wants to be on c8. The rook's not really doing anything here, so he kind of wants to trade it for this good rook. So my opponent plays rook f8, I play knight d4, looking to go for knight e7. In some positions, sometimes I go for knight f6, and my opponent plays queen d4. Queen d4 is a kind of confusing move, because the idea was to stop knight f6, but knight f6 wasn't even that big of a threat, because you can just take and go with your knight on e5, and yeah, or you can just play king h8, knight e5, and then there's a threat here. So knight f6 wasn't even a threat. So here I play bishop f4, which is a mistake. Here I should play knight c7, and then play knight e6, and well, usually you don't expect your opponent to blunder such simple tactics, and well, I wasn't really looking for tactics here. I thought I just had a lot of positional pressure. But knight c7, knight e6 is a simple fork. Here you attack the rook, he moves, and then we get a fork here. And this should just be winning. So I missed that. So instead I play bishop e4, threatening the d6 pawn. And here my opponent should take on b2, and I should play knight c7, and then he should move his rook. I'll play knight e6, take the bishop, and then take this pawn. And the position is much better for me, but there's counterplay, obviously. I'm up a pawn, and I have two connected pass pawns, but he has some pressure, I guess. But instead he played knight e5, which I feel is another bad move, because again, it actually allows the same tactic. But also I feel like my move, which is a blunder, is not that bad either. Is bishop takes e5, and here he took with the queen, which the engine at like depth 20 thinks is the best move, and then as you go up, then it says d takes is the best move, which still allows this tactic. And now bishop takes is the best move, and then queen h3 with knight e7 coming. I mean, Yeah, this doesn't look pretty reasonable. So if bishop takes e5, I'll go queen h3. I have bishop e6. I have knight f6. I have like knight e7 threats. I have a lot of threats here. But instead he takes here. I play queen h4, threatening knight e7 check. Rook a8. He covers the check. And here I thought I had a tactic. I thought I could take here. If he takes with the rook, then I give knight e7 check. He goes here. I take on g6 with the fork. So I played rook x a1, but actually here after rook x a1, the thing I forgot was that tactic doesn't work actually, because if he takes with the bishop, I give a fork here. If he takes with the king, I take here. But when he takes with the rook and I play knight f7, I had only calculated king h8, and I was like, okay, this line should just be completely winning for me. But the line I missed, which makes it equal, is king f7. And this position is actually just equal, and I just want to know, what would you guys play here? Because the move I played, I feel, is like a move that you don't really want to play, but it's actually the best move. Here I played knight d5, and what I just wanted to happen was I wanted him to go rook, king g8 so I could just defend my pawn. And I was thinking that he has a chance of playing a mistake like queen xb2, because then rook f1 and queen e7 come with a lot of power. Like if he takes here, if you're wondering why he can't take here, the reason is I have rook e1 and then I have knight e7 with the checkmate threat. So, yeah, and he no longer has king f7. So I was just hoping for some mistake here. And thankfully for me, it did come with h5. And this is a big mistake because if he goes to g8, he's simply just equal. And the position is, the engine says I should just repeat, which I would never do because I'm up a pawn. But I'm also still surprised that the position is equal, but the bishop, I guess, is very strong. I played rook e1, king g8, and here we play a series of around 10 accurate moves. Rook x f8, bishop x f8, queen f6. I have to trade queens here because he was going to take b2 otherwise. And queen x f6, knight x x6, king f7. The position is actually surprisingly hard to play for white here, because if you move the knight to any of these squares, you can get the knight trapped. If you go here, bishop e7 comes. If you go here, you get met by king c6 and you lose a knight. And these squares are obviously covered, so you have to go to knight d5. And here it's important to make the calculation: can the king reach the pawns before your king? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So surprisingly, even though my king's in the corner, I can get to the center just relatively as fast as his king can. So he went king e6, which is a bad move. He should try to activate with bishop g7, and after b3 or knight c3, the position is better for me, but I'll still have to convert that endgame. After king g1, king e5, and this position, checkmate, comes in 4 moves, which is absolutely ridiculous. You would never think that would ever happen, but see if you can imagine the position in which checkmate occurs. So I start off with king e1, king f1, and at this point I had not actually seen any checkmate ideas, but my opponent just gets checkmated in 2 moves here. King d4, king e2, or sorry, 3 moves. King e2, bishop g7. So here my opponent gets his bishop on this nice diagonal. Maybe he's going to play king c5 and get a nice position. And here I play knight f4. And he has to pretty much just give up the pawn, and that's the best move. But my opponent didn't want to give up the pawn, and he played bishop e5. And as you can see from the evaluation bar, the position is completely winning now. See if you can find the move that pretty much ends black's game. The move is the astonishing knight e6. And this is checkmate. The most crazy checkmate I have ever seen. All the squares are covered, and just a knight is checkmating. It's not even a smothered mate. It's 2 pawns, 3 pawns, and a king. Every square is covered. And this may be the most beautiful checkmate I have ever played, because it is absolutely stunning. The knight just covers every square. The pawns cover the squares. The king covers 1 square. The pawn covers squares. All the pieces working harmoniously. So if you're wondering what he should have done in this position, he has to play king bishop f6 and allow us to take here and then take this pawn. And that's obvious. The idea of bishop e5 is that if I take here, he's going to take here. And actually that endgame, I think, might be a draw, because it's impossible to push this pawn due to the dark square blockade. And after something like bishop g3 and here, I can't move my king without losing this pawn. I can't break either of these pawns with my knight. I can't really try to go for these pawns because how does my knight defend this pawn? It has to be on a dark square, as you can see. So if I played knight x g3, I'm not sure I'm even winning anymore. I think this was a clever trap by my opponent to not go into a lost endgame. Yeah, well, the endgame's winning. Okay, because I can play knight h4 and prevent h4 from coming. But then he plays bishop g3, doesn't he? Knight h4. Wait. Knight h4. Bishop takes f2. Oh, wait, sorry. Takes here, knight h4. Sorry, I apologize. I haven't been able to upload recently because my Wi-Fi has been pretty bad. Oh, he can't play g3 because of bishop f5. Wow. That's a nice point. So he has to play bishop f4. So yeah, this was a checkmate at the end of the game, and it was a really beautiful one. So if you liked the video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe. And I apologize for the audio issues and the lag issues. There's actually nothing I can do at the moment, so hopefully when this thing is over, I'll be able to get back to uploading high quality videos. Thank you.